So hello everyone. Let's dive into the newer antifibrotic that is being coming up. So the basal antifibrotic that we all know is Pirfenidone and nintedanib, and the recently discovered is the nerandomilast, which we have already discussed in the previous videos. So now comes the newer antifibrotic. So Pirfenidone and nintedanib, they definitely slow IPF, but they don't stop it. They don't reverse it. So for the last decade, the field has been hunting for the next antifibrotic mechanism, and one of the promising candidate for this category was LPA1. So let's start with the pathophysiology. So LPA is lysophosphatidylate acid. It is a bioactive phospholipid which is basically involved in the fibroblast recruitment, myofibroblast differentiation, epithelial apoptosis, vascular leak, fibrogenesis. It basically promotes normal wound healing and collagen deposition, including fibroblast activation, proliferation, and migration. So, increased levels of LPA and activation of LPA1 basically can lead to fibrosis, and this is the pathogenesis which is being implicated in IPF. So in IPF, as we all know, there is an increased autotaxin expression in the fibrotic lungs. In the bowel fluids, we can also check for the elevated LPA levels, and there is an increased LPA receptor signaling. So the main function of autotaxin is to convert lysophosphatidylcholine into lysophosphatidic acid, and which ultimately leads to fibrosis. So this is one of the pathway which has attracted the newer antifibrotic. So this is the simple pathway. So lysophosphatidylcholine and autotaxin, which is being increased in IPF, converts this into LPA, lysophosphatidic acid. It acts on the LPA1 receptor, leads to fibroblast migration, then myofibroblast activation, collagen deposition, and ultimately fibrosis. So, for targeting these LPA1 as well as LPA1 receptor, few drugs were discovered, which include a BMS 986020. Then there is a ziritaxestat, and then there is Admilparant. So this was LPA1 receptor antagonist, this was autotaxin inhibitor, and this is the next generation LPA1 antagonist which we'll be actually discussing. So let's start with the first one. The first generation orally bioavailable LPA1 antagonist. It basically demonstrated the proof of mechanism in phase 2 clinical trial in patients with IPF. So in the trial, they basically compared 600 mg BD dosing of this antifibrotic with placebo for 26 weeks, and it basically slowed the FVC decline significantly. But however, it was well tolerated, but still the clinical program was terminated because of the hepatobiliary effects. So there were many patients who had raised OTPT and who had cholecystitis, leading to even cholecystectomy in 3 patients. Then they further follow up in vivo and vitro. They did the analysis and they observed that these hepatobiliary toxicity was not related to the LPA1 antagonism. It was basically related to the molecule itself. So then they find the another molecule. So the FLORA study, it was a double-blind placebo-controlled study done at 17 centers. So the patients they enrolled were IPF patients who were not receiving any antifibrotic. They gave this treatment GLP G1690 600 mg daily for 12 weeks, and the primary findings that LPA levels were actually suppressed and patient showed stabilization of lung function, although placebo patients they showed demonstrated expected decline. So it was well tolerated and there were no majority safety signals. This was published in Lancet actually. So this FLORA trial basically it generated excitement because for the first time there was a drug which was oral therapy with a novel mechanism, strong biomarker suppression, encouraging FVC signal, and a good safety profile. So it was rapidly advanced to phase 3. So this is where the story turns. ISABELA 1 and ISABELA 2. These were two identical global phase 3 trials and they enrolled roughly 1500 IPF patients and they were randomized to ziritaxestat 600 mg, ziritaxestat 200 mg, and a placebo group, and all on the top of a standard background antifibrotics. The primary endpoint which was seen was rate of FVC decline over 52 weeks. So on paper, this was about as well designed as a phase 3 antifibrotic trial gets. A global background of Pirfenidone and nintedanib allowed clinically meaningful points like FVC decline, disease progression, mortality, hospitalization. So everyone expected this to be a becoming a registration study, but then suddenly in March 2021, both the trials were stopped early. The reason was an unfavorable benefit risk profile. Unexpected safety concerns had emerged, and despite the strong biological rationale, efficacy simply wasn't enough to outweigh the toxicity. So final publication came in JAMA 2023, which says that there was no clinically meaningful reduction in FVC decline, increased adverse events, higher mortality signal in treatment arms, development was terminated. So due to an independent data and safety monitoring committee concluded that the benefit to risk profile of this ziritaxestat no longer supported their continuation. So why did a drug with this much of biological promise fail so decisively in phase 3? The four reasons which are worth sitting with because they generalize well beyond this one molecule. So biology is more complex than expected. So there are multiple pathways which coexist, and blocking one does not always shut down the process actually. Next, by the time most trial patients were enrolled, they already had an established fibrosis. This may be a pathway that matters more early and not at all once scarring is set. Now, third, so basically, long-term autotaxin inhibition may affect the pathway beyond the fibrosis. And last one, this is the one which I would want every trainee to internalize, that biomarker success is not a clinical success. 90% suppression of plasma LPA did not translate into a meaningful outcome. This is a humbling lesson for all that how we interpret surrogate endpoints in fibrosis, all the trials of fibrosis generally. Despite the failure of ziritaxestat, the pathway is not considered dead. There comes the next molecule, BMS 986278, Admilparant. This is a second generation LPA1 antagonist, and there was no evidence of hepatobiliary toxicity in non-clinical evaluation or phase 1 studies. So presently it is in phase 2 development, especially in patients with IPF and PF ILD. This is one of the paper on Admilparant, which was published in Chest Journal. So now what happened in this trial? So this is phase 2 randomized double anonymized placebo-controlled study. So patients with IPF and PPF, they were included and randomized into three arms with 60 mg Admilparant, 30 mg Admilparant, and placebo, of course. Background antifibrotics, they were allowed. So what they found that 60 mg Admilparant, it delayed the disease progression in the terms of FVC over 26 weeks when compared with placebo. Although 30 mg Admilparant did not delay disease progression over 26 weeks versus placebo. So these findings further supported evaluation of Admilparant as a therapeutic options for patients with IPF and PPF in phase 3 trial. So now it is in global phase 3 testing, split into ALOFT-IPF and PPF, enrolling over 400 sites across more than 30 countries, with the primary completion currently estimated around late 2026. So, so if we look at the timeline series of these newer antifibrotics, so in 2015 to 2020, target was identified, which attracted antifibrotic pathway. 2016, around the first BMS 986020. It was a positive signal, but then it halted due to hepatobiliary toxicity. Then in 2018, the FLORA study, the ziritaxestat, it came as a strong biomarker suppression. Then in 2019, the ISABELA Phase 3 began, which enrolled around 1,500 patients globally. But in March 2021, this ISABELA trial, this was halted early because of the safety concerns. Then in 2023, the final JAMA publication confirmed the failure. In 2023 itself, Admilparant Phase 2 started, which was a breakthrough therapy designation. And now 2023 to 2026, now we are waiting for the ALOFT Phase 3 program trial results. So thank you all. That was about the newer antifibrotic drug from my side. So basically in IPF, successful target engagement and biomarker suppression itself is not sufficient. So the newer therapies, they must demonstrate the modulation of fibrosis pathways, translating into a good quality of life, lung function and survival also. Thank you and have a good day.